My friends, I stand before you with a message that might stir your heart or shake your soul. But whether it comforts you or convicts you, you need to hear it. Because somewhere in the corner of your life there is a woman, a mother, a daughter, a wife, a friend, and she carries a memory you thought was long buried. But it is alive in her. You may think the past is over. You may think words evaporate, that wounds fade. But listen, memory is the echo of the soul, and a woman's soul remembers what the world forgets. She remembers the promises you made and broke. She remembers the night you ignored her tears. She remembers the praise you gave in public, and the cruelty behind closed doors. She remembers the kindness of a stranger when no one else cared. She remembers the silence when she cried for help. You say, "But that was so long ago." She says, "But I still feel it like it was yesterday." Why? Because memory isn't just a mental file. It's a spiritual record. Now, I'm not here tonight to shame you. I'm here to wake you. Wake you to the truth that your words matter. Your presence matters. Your neglect matters. She remembers. And heaven does too. There are people who live their whole lives thinking they've moved on, but they've left behind hearts full of unanswered questions and unhealed bruises. And those bruises walk beside you, though you never see them. But listen, dear friend, this isn't the end of the story. There is grace, there is mercy, there is healing, but not without truth, not without repentance, not without a willingness to look her in the eyes and say, "I see you, I hear you, and I'm ready to make it right." So don't walk away, don't tune out, because the end of this message isn't pain, it's restoration. If you'll stay with me, I'll show you not just the weight of her memory, but the power of your redemption, because she remembers more than you think. But if you remember too, something beautiful can be born again. Amen. There is something profoundly sacred and often misunderstood about the way a woman remembers. Her memory is not merely the recollection of facts, not a mechanical list of past events. No, it is much deeper than that. A woman remembers with her heart. She remembers with her senses, with her spirit, with her silence. The tone of a voice, the look in someone's eyes, the pause before a word was spoken. All of these things lodge themselves in places within her that even she sometimes cannot explain. And what's even more powerful, more staggering, is that she remembers long after others have dismissed those moments as meaningless. You see, when a man forgets a harsh word spoken in frustration, a woman often replays it days later. Not because she wants to hold a grudge, but because her soul was bruised by it. When someone walks out of the room mid-conversation, thinking nothing of it, she remembers the feeling of abandonment it caused. When someone laughs at her dreams or doubts her strength, that memory does not vanish. It settles inside her like a question she has to answer every day. It's not that she is overly sensitive. It is that she is deeply aware. Her memory is not weakness. It is strength wrapped in tenderness. It is the mark of one who truly sees and hears and feels the world. This depth of memory is why she holds on to small acts of love with such warmth. A gentle touch on a rough day, a kind word when she felt invisible, a moment of patience when she didn't deserve it. These things are not lost on her. She treasures them. They live in her, forming a well of quiet strength. So often people only associate women's memories with pain or bitterness, but that is a shallow understanding. Her memory contains sorrow, yes, but it also holds beauty, joy, and moments of sacred trust. The depth of a woman's memory means that every interaction has weight. What you say matters. What you do not say matters. What you repeat without thinking, and what you withhold out of fear, all of it matters. Because she is not forgetful, and she is not indifferent. She has the capacity to carry the echoes of years in a single heartbeat. This is why betrayal cuts so deeply, and why loyalty is honored so fiercely. She remembers the wounds, but she also remembers who stood by her in them, and perhaps this is why we fear her memory, because it exposes truth. It does not flatter. It holds a mirror to what we've done and what we've failed to do. But if we would only see it differently, we would understand that her memory is not a curse. It is a gift. It means we can still be held accountable. It means we still have the opportunity to write better memories in her heart, ones that will endure longer than regret ever could. There are moments in life that pass by quickly for some, but stay with others forever. And for a woman, many of those moments are etched not in the mind alone, but into the very fabric of her soul. Emotional experiences, whether filled with joy or marked by pain, are never casual for her. They settle into her like ink on parchment, permanent, deep, and alive. The smallest things others call insignificant, she remembers. Not because she chooses to dwell on them, but because they touched her in a place too deep for forgetting. A sigh, a dismissal, a look of disgust, or a gesture of warmth, she remembers. And not just the act itself, but the way it made her feel. The emotion it stirred becomes a lasting imprint that often shapes how she walks into every room afterward. It is in this sacred remembering that her strength is so often misunderstood. People think she is being dramatic or emotional when she brings up something that happened years ago. But what they don't see is that her emotional memory is her compass. It guides her decisions. It teaches her who is safe, who is sincere, and who merely performs affection with hollow words. She doesn't need a calendar to recall the day she felt unseen. She doesn't need a journal to remind her of the tone you used when you said, "You're overreacting." Because her soul still echoes with the feeling of being dismissed. The sacredness of these imprints is not a matter of stubbornness or weakness. It is a reflection of how deeply she was created to feel, to love, to care, and to connect. Her emotional intelligence, often overlooked or ridiculed, is in fact one of the most spiritually sensitive instruments in human existence. It picks up on dishonesty even when lips smile. It detects emotional absence even when words say, "I'm here." And it holds on to moments of truth, even when time tries to erase them. She remembers when you laughed at her vulnerability. She remembers when you rolled your eyes as she cried. She remembers the moment she realized you weren't listening anymore. These moments are burned into her because they were sacred opportunities. Opportunities for connection, for love, for support, that were thrown aside. And on the other side of that same coin, she also remembers when someone listened without judgment. When someone touched her hand just to remind her she wasn't alone. When someone saw her breaking and said, "I won't leave you." These memories don't fade with time. They become landmarks. They become the architecture of her trust, her boundaries, and her sense of worth. So when she brings something up again, when she reminds you of something you forgot, understand this. It's not about rehashing the past. It's about honoring the depth of her experience. Because what left a momentary impression on you may have left a permanent mark on her. And once you understand the sacredness of what she carries, you will no longer treat her memories as burdens, but as revelations. There are wounds that bleed in the open, and there are wounds that never break the skin. The ones that hide beneath the surface, the ones no one asks about, the ones that sit quietly inside a woman's chest. Those are the ones that leave the deepest scars. She doesn't cry every time she's hurting. She doesn't scream when she feels abandoned. In fact, most of the time she doesn't say a word. She carries it with her, through her day, through her work, through the conversations where she smiles and nods, pretending everything is fine. But inside there is a wound that was never bandaged, never acknowledged, never even seen. And still she stands. Still she keeps going. Still, she shows up for the people who walked right past her pain. Her silence is not forgetfulness. Her quiet is not weakness. It is survival. You think she's let it go because she hasn't mentioned it again. But the truth is, she remembers it more clearly than ever. That silence you took as peace was actually her surrendering to the reality that you weren't going to acknowledge the damage. So she stopped trying. But she never forgot. She remembers the moment her trust cracked. She remembers the first time she felt like her voice didn't matter. She remembers the way her spirit folded in on itself when she realized she had to be her own comfort. These aren't just memories. They are internal bruises. And just like a broken bone that never healed properly, they ache whenever life presses too hard in the same place. She didn't ask for attention because she's learned not to expect it. She didn't demand apologies because she's grown used to disappointment. And still in all of that, she endures. That is the silent strength so many overlook. The ability to live with wounds that never got names. The grace to carry the burden of memory without bitterness on her face. The discipline to still love, still give, still believe, while healing herself behind closed doors. It is so easy to underestimate this kind of strength because it doesn't make noise. It doesn't beg for recognition. It doesn't wave a banner that says, "I'm still standing despite what you did." But make no mistake, she is still standing. And not because it didn't hurt, but because she chose to rise anyway. The world often praises loud victories, but God sees the quiet resilience of a woman who chooses love after betrayal, who chooses hope after heartbreak, who chooses dignity over revenge. Her scars may not be visible to the eye, but they are written across her heart, woven into her prayers and etched into her wisdom. So the next time you wonder why she's distant, why her eyes dim when a certain subject comes up, or why she goes silent in moments that used to bring her joy, remember this: she hasn't forgotten. She's just surviving in silence, gathering strength in places you cannot see. It's amazing how people think a moment doesn't matter. How a single sentence, a small gesture, or even a passing silence could be forgotten in a day. Like wind passing through trees, but not for her. Not for the woman who pays attention. Not just to words, but to what's behind them. Not for the woman who listens not just with her ears, but with her heart. For her, the things that most people overlook, the tone you used, when you answered her, the way your eyes wandered when she spoke, the casual dismissal of her worries, those things linger. And they don't just linger in her mind, they mark her, they shape her, they build the architecture of her trust, or they slowly dismantle it. You see, kindness is not a bonus to her, it is a necessity. Not because she is fragile, but because she lives in a world that too often tells her to toughen up, to get over it, to lower her expectations. But when you offer her kindness, even in the smallest way, it plants something sacred inside her. When you hold the door and mean it, when you listen without interrupting, when you speak with gentleness even when you're tired, that kindness echoes. It echoes because it stands out. It's rare, it's real, and she remembers it. She remembers the man who said, "Take your time," when the world told her to hurry. She remembers the friend who stayed on the phone even when she said, "I'm fine." She remembers the stranger who gave her a smile on the day she felt invisible. But just as powerfully, she remembers neglect. She remembers the birthdays forgotten, the moments when she was vulnerable and met with indifference, the times she spoke truth and was met with silence. Neglect doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the absence of what should have been said, what should have been done. And those wounds cut deep because they're invisible. No one apologizes for what they didn't say. No one makes amends for the hug they never gave, but she remembers. Because that absence created a presence in her life. A presence of loneliness, of rejection, of not being enough. What's so dangerous about neglect is that it pretends to be nothing. It slips by unnoticed by the one who delivered it. But for her, it's never nothing. It's a question that never got answered, a need that never got met, a space that never got filled. And the saddest part? Most of the people who wounded her this way have no idea. They've moved on. They've forgotten. But she hasn't. She carries it in her posture, in her hesitation, in the way she second-guesses whether she's wanted in the room. Kindness builds a woman. Neglect breaks her slowly. One shows her that she matters. The other convinces her she doesn't. And once that seed of doubt is planted, it grows into silence, withdrawal, or a guarded heart. Not because she wants to shut people out, but because she's tired of being remembered only when it's convenient and forgotten when it counts. There comes a moment, sooner or later, when every word you've spoken, every choice you've made, every moment you've brushed off as no big deal comes back around. It comes not with vengeance but with truth, and that truth often shows up in the form of her memory. The woman you hurt, the one you ignored, the one whose heart you mishandled, she hasn't forgotten. She may not have said anything. She may have smiled and moved on. But beneath that calm exterior is a soul that has carried what you left behind. And now, the time has come to face it. That is the call to accountability. You told her she was being too emotional, too sensitive, too needy. You said she was remembering things wrong, twisting your words, exaggerating what happened. But deep down you knew. You knew that what you said cut deep. You knew your silence wasn't just silence, it was abandonment. You knew that your sarcasm was a blade dressed up as humor. And she remembers. Not because she's holding a grudge, but because her spirit has been changed by those moments. They formed a lens through which she now sees you. And more importantly, through which she sees herself. You may be tempted to say, that was years ago. Why are we still talking about this? But that question is not hers to answer. It's yours. Why are you so desperate to forget what she can't? Why does her remembering make you so uncomfortable? Is it because deep down you know you never made it right? That's the power of accountability. It does not come when we're ready. It comes when the truth is ready to be seen. And when she brings up the past, not to shame you, but to reveal what was never healed, you have a choice. You can dismiss her again, bury the discomfort again, walk away again, or you can listen, really listen, and realize that you have the power to stop the cycle. Too many people confuse forgiveness with forgetting. They expect her to move on while they remain unchanged. But there is no healing without acknowledgement. There is no growth without truth. She doesn't want to hold your mistakes over your head. She wants to know that you see what they did to her, that you understand why she changed, that you don't expect her to go back to how things used to be when she's carrying the weight of everything you forgot. And if you're feeling defensive right now, good. That's the edge of transformation. That's the holy ground where denial dies and humility begins. This isn't about guilt, it's about growth. Accountability is not about proving you were wrong. It's about choosing to be better now, or remembers more than you think, not to torment you, but to invite you into something real, something honest, something redeemed. But that can only happen if you have the courage to look at her memory and say, I did that, and I won't do it again. She remembers more than you think, but memory is not the end of the story. For every wound she carries, for every moment she replays in silence, for every tear she wiped away when no one noticed, there is still the possibility of healing. But healing does not begin with time. It begins with truth. It begins when someone chooses to stop pretending she's fine and instead chooses to see her fully, in all her pain and all her power. It begins when the people who caused the harm stop making excuses and start making changes. She has heard all the empty apologies. She's heard, I didn't mean it. You're too sensitive. Why can't you just let it go? But those phrases are not bridges. They are barriers. They are words that place the burden back on her shoulders while the offender walks away unscathed. What she's waiting for, what she deserves, is not a bandage made of guilt. It is a balm made of honesty. She needs someone to say, I see what I did. I see what it did to you. And I am not the same person now. That's where healing starts. That's when her memory begins to breathe again, not as a weight, but as a witness to change. And if you think she's too angry to forgive, too guarded to love, too hurt to come back, look again. Beneath the walls is a heart that still believes healing is possible. A heart that still wants to trust, to feel safe, to open again. But she's not going to do it for someone who refuses to grow. She's not going to hand her heart to someone who only wants to silence her memories instead of understanding them. Redemption requires more than regret. It requires transformation, and transformation is born from humility. You see, when someone truly seeks forgiveness, they don't demand to be believed. They live in a way that earns it. They don't rush her process. They respect it. They don't manipulate her pain to protect their pride. They honor it to prove they've changed. And slowly, when that kind of integrity becomes consistent, something begins to shift in her. The weight she's been carrying starts to lift, not because she was forced to forget, but because she was finally safe enough to release it. That is the miracle of redemption. It doesn't erase memory, it rewrites it. She will never forget what happened, but she can remember how healing came. She can remember the moment someone truly saw her. She can remember when accountability replaced avoidance. She can remember how her pain was finally met with love, not shame. And in that space, in that sacred moment, her memory no longer holds her captive. It sets her free. She remembers more than you think, not to hold the past over anyone's head, but because her heart has always been a keeper of truth. Her memory is not a weapon. It is not manipulation. It is not a flaw. It is the sacred evidence of every moment that shaped her, broke her, lifted her, and changed her. It is the proof of her survival, the story of her becoming. She carries within her the echoes of kindness and the silence of neglect. She bears the marks of wounds no one saw and the warmth of love that arrived when she least expected it. She is not bitter because she remembers. She is strong because she does. She is not broken by her memory, she is informed by it. And if there is any wisdom we must leave with today, it is this. Her memory is not a burden to run from, but a mirror we must dare to look into. To those who've dismissed her pain, doubted her story, forgotten what she could not, you still have time. Time to listen, time to apologize, time to change. To those who have loved her well, who have seen her clearly, who have honored her truth, you are written on her heart in ways you'll never fully understand. And to the woman who remembers, who carries both sorrow and strength in her silence, your memory is not too much. Your voice is not too loud. Your truth is not too late. Let it rise, let it teach, let it lead. Because what you remember is real, and what you choose to do with it now is where healing begins. This is not just a message. This is a call to see her, to hear her, to honor what she remembers, because she remembers more than you think, and today so will you.